Good morning.
Good morning.
We have a quorum.
Good morning.
Okay, good. I'm going to call the meeting is in session, and we'll do some introductions. I'm Marilyn Massey, Chair, and to my left,
I am B. Babbitt. Go ahead.
Yeah. Jody Barker, Area Agency on Aging Director. This is the July 27th meeting of the Regional Advisory Council.
okay.
Let's see, let's get.
Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Oh, before we continue,
We do have Debbie Levin Stankovic, RAC member in the room. And we also have Melissa Marks, staff member, and Laura Cruz, staff member. Jared, would you call out the individual members who are online?
I'll be happy to. So
Thank you.
starting with the RAC members for online, Jim Woodard. Jim, if you can introduce yourself.
Oh, hi. Jim Woodard. I'm the Teller County representative to RAC.
Thank you. Maria Cordova.
Good morning, I'm Maria Cordova, Community Outreach Coordinator for the Independence Center, and I'm in Park County, Teller County, and El Paso County.
Thank you. And Mary Kopp.
It's Kep, but I don't know if you can hear me and I can't get a really good picture, but I'm Mary Kep and I am the El Paso County representative.
We can hear you great. So those are the RAC members for online.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we do have Bill Bowles as well, representing Park County here in the room.
Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Do
So
we have a
moved.
quorum?
Yes.
I make a motion to approve the agenda for today.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. And regarding the minutes from last meeting, do I have a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor of approving the minutes from last meeting, raise your hand or say hi.
Aye.
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 Thank you. Any action items?
Actually, number 4 is public comments. So at this time, I have not received any requests for public comments. Jared, have you received anything to the main?
We have not. In the meantime, I'll ask anyone who's not a RAC member online to use the raise hand function to let us know if they'd like to make a public comment. But in the meantime, while we're waiting for any hands to come up, we did not receive any advance requests for public comment, and we did not receive any submitted public comment through the email. I don't see any hands raised. I think we're good to proceed.
Thank you, Jared. And so for number 5 action items, we have no action items this month, Madam Chair. So we are ready to move on to our presentations under 6A.
Our first presentation is the Independence Center with Maria Cordova, who's already introduced herself to us. She is the Community Outreach Coordinator for the Independence Center. Go ahead,
Good morning.
Maria.
Thank you. Oh, thank you so much, Madam Chair. And Jared, did you need me to share my screen or?
Either way, we have the slides if you want us to share, or if you want to share on your end, dealer's choice on your end.
Okay. Yeah, if you want to go ahead and share them, we'll begin.
Alrighty, give me a sec.
Thank you.
My screen is telling me my camera is disabled and I can't share.
That's probably when you initially logged in, but once we promote you into the speaker role as a RAC member, so you can dismiss that notification, but we can see and hear you. So your microphone and camera are enabled.
Okay, okay, and I've got her slide. Okay.
Great, thank you so much. And everyone can see and hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, I will be presenting on the Independence Center. We work towards empowering people with disabilities in the Pikes Peak region. And if anyone was able to attend our festival yesterday, you'd probably seen the bottom of the slide. We're working to build a world where everyone is known, valued, and included. Next slide, please. And so our mission is by working with people with disabilities, their families, and the community, we create independence so that all may thrive. Next slide, please. And then first of all, we wanted to go over what a Center for Independent Living is. We also call it a CIL or a CIL. And a Center for Independent Living is a nonprofit organization. We were established thanks to funding through the 1978 reauthorization of the Rehabilitation Act. There are 340 CILs in the United States, and we have 9 in Colorado. Because of our name, we also have to let people know that we are not a living facility and we're not a social service organization. We are a disability resource center. And we provide services to those who self-disclose a disability. So we don't require proof to work with anybody. And we also work with people of all ages. And we work to empower persons with disabilities. We want to maximize their independence within the community. And we work to remove barriers that prevent integration and equal opportunity. Next slide, please. And so we have 4 main programs that we provide. One of them is a family and friend caregiver program. One is independent living skills. Another is veteran directed care. And then we also work towards individual and systems advocacy. And we'll get into all of this more in the next slides. Next slides, please. Or next slide, please. Thank you. And so we have 51% of our CIL staff and board members are required to have a disability. We have nearly 300 total employees. About 20% of our employees work in office. The rest are paid caregivers. Those are family and friend caregivers. And we are a nonprofit organization. And we have exceeded that 51% of our staff members fitting that requirement. And so we are very much peer-led. Next slide, please. And so who we serve, these are the types of disabilities that we serve, and it truly encompasses everybody. We work with people who have physical disabilities, who are blind and or have low vision, cognitive disabilities, those who are deaf and hard of hearing, and those with mental disabilities. Next slide, please. This is our service area map. It's also located on our website. And if anyone would like a paper copy, I can, or if you want me to forward it to you, I can definitely do that. You can reach out. This covers our entire service area. So we have 4 counties where all of our services are provided. Park County, Teller County, El Paso, and Lincoln counties have our independent living services, our veteran directed care services, and our home health services. Kit Carson and Cheyenne have both our independent living and our veteran charge services. And then all of the other counties that are listed have at least one service, and that includes home health and veteran directed care. For the counties outside of our independent living service, we work with our other 9 CILs in the state to get people connected to those independent living services. Next slide, please. And this is what we are going towards. This is our new overall goal. We want to build a world where everyone is known, valued, and included. That includes building people's skills, that includes advocacy in various realms, and it includes working with all of our community partners. Next slide, please. And now we'll get more into our SIL services. Every SIL in the nation is required to offer 5 core services. Those include advocacy, information and referral, independent living skills, peer support and mentoring, and transitions, which we'll cover in these next few slides. Our SIL also offers a variety of additional services on top of those 5 core services. And on this slide, we'll talk a little bit about home modifications. So we help people find grant funding and others and connect them to other services so that they can get home modifications. That includes grab bars, ramps, helping people find assistive technology like shower chairs. It can also help people find funding sources through Medicaid or the VA to get walk-in showers or roll-in showers. And so it really includes a variety of things. We'll also help people find out if they're eligible for those programs, because there are certain criteria that people have to follow. There can be out-of-pocket costs, and so we'll help people find additional resources to see if they can help get that covered. We also help people find information about housing. Housing has been difficult everywhere right now, but we do our best to make sure people know when housing lists are open, if they're eligible for certain housing programs, helping people get signed up for the VI SPDAT if they're experiencing homelessness, so that they can get into homes or shelters or whatever it is they're looking for. And then we also help people who are blind and have low vision. And so we work with a lot of local community partners to help people find the assistive technology that they need so that they can learn how to use their phone, have an adaptive phone if that's something that they're requiring, helping people get linked into different services that can help with navigation. And so if someone needs to be trained on how to use a white cane, we can help people get that training. There's a variety of things involved with that as well. And then we also help people with transitions. And so that can help people not be placed into a living facility if they don't want to be, or it can help people leave a nursing home or a facility if they no longer want to be there. It's also making sure that they have the appropriate services and supports to make that happen. Sometimes there are certain situations where at that time when the request comes in, there may not be enough supports and services for the person to leave that facility. But if that's something they really want to work towards, we can make sure that they can get what they're needed or what they need to be able to leave and then get integrated into the community. And then we also offer skills classes. And so that can be anything related to independent living. So that can be budgeting, that can be helping people learn how to shop. It can be basic math classes, and so which is involved with budgeting. We can help people navigate the city, help people learn how to get on and off the bus, a variety of things. Yes, do we have a question? Oh, sorry, Mary, you're muted.
Yes, got it. I do have a question, and I sent it on the chat, but I don't know if the chat actually went anywhere. The skill classes, are those offered in sign language when it's necessary?
So we do have a deaf services specialist, and she can help with some basic sign language. We don't offer sign language classes, but we do refer people to the Colorado Springs School for the Deaf and Blind. They offer community classes, and so you can have that skill be built. You do have to pay for those classes. I do believe they offer some scholarships, though.
That actually wasn't my question, but that's
Oh,
really
I'm
good
sorry.
information. My question was if you're
Oh,
teaching
if
you're
yes,
teaching a skill class, like in
I'm
budgeting,
sorry.
does
Yeah, I misunderstood you. Yes, so we can offer accommodations to make sure we have a translator so that skills can be offered in ASL. And our deaf specialist too, if she's leading the class, she speaks ASL, so she'll offer that class in ASL. Yeah, sorry about that.
thanks.
And Maria and Mary,
Yes.
I just wanted to jump in there. Yesterday at the festival, you guys had sign language interpreters there in person, running around at the festival. There were numerous people who were deaf who were there, and there was always an interpreter on hand to help those folks communicate with all the vendors. It was really, really, really well done. So that was a great resource to have at that event yesterday.
What was the event yesterday?
It was our ADA celebration. And Melissa, I forgot to tell you the anniversary year. So 33 years of celebrating the Americans with Disability Act being passed. And so we invited everybody to come in and check out the building and participate in accessible activities.
Maria, this is Jody. I just wanted to also highlight where you talked about the transition work. For those who may not be aware, the Independence Center were nationally recognized for their transition program a couple of years ago. And so that was really exciting to know that that work is available in that program is available in our community, but just that it's a quality that rises to the national recognition. So just wanted to share that as well.
Yes, thank you. We appreciate that. Our transitions coordinator, Yolanda, is amazing. She knows her stuff. And so if you ever want to meet her, we'll get you in touch with her as well. Does anyone have any other questions?
I have a couple, but I think maybe it might be better if you go through your whole program before I ask my questions.
Sure. Yeah. And then we'll go over some more of the skill services we provide. If we could go to the next slide, please. All right. And so we also help people receive what they need to live independently, and that also includes disability benefits. Right now, we do not have a benefits coordinator. We're hiring for a new one. Our former benefit specialist has left. So we are currently referring people to Benefits in Action so that people can get help with Medicaid and Social Security information. Once we have our benefits coordinator back in the office, we can accept people back into our office to help them with those questions and those applications. We can also help people with accommodations with filling out those applications if that's needed. We also help people learn about transportation. Laura Cruz has been awesome with working with us to make sure we're letting people know what transportation is available out in the community. And we also have a deaf and blind services specialist who can help people learn how to get on and off the bus and how the bus card works, how to navigate around areas to make sure they're being safe. And there's also more traffic lights that have, when you hit the button to cross, it'll verbally tell you to wait and it'll verbally tell you to cross. And then there's also buzzers and beepers too. Sometimes it'll buzz when you can walk and then it'll stop when you should wait. And so we train people on that as well. And then we also offer assistive technology training. And that can even include helping people learn how to use the cell phone or a laptop. We also helped a lot of people create email addresses and learn how to use their email, opening and closing emails, sending emails. But we also have other programs like JAWS and other assistive technology programs that we can help people learn how to use and work. Next slide, please. And then everything that we do is voluntary, and it's very much driven by the person that we're working with to establish those goals. And so we also offer outreach services. And so my role has currently changed a little bit, but I'm still doing this. We now have 2 outreach coordinators who go out into our rural catchment areas. So we go out to Teller County, Park County. We are in rural El Paso County. We go out east to Lincoln, Kit Carson, and Cheyenne counties, and we bring our services out to the rural areas, and we share information. We meet with people. We work with community partners. We'll volunteer with community partners to help give out commodities and make sure people are getting the food that they need. And so if people can't come to us, we'll go out to them. And we can also meet people in their homes if transportation is a barrier. And we'll also meet in their local community if they want to meet at a library, if they want to meet at a coffee shop, wherever someone wants to meet, we can meet with them. We also offer a lot of support groups, and our support groups are all peer-led. And so that can actually mean a lot. We could tell somebody something over and over again, but sometimes if they hear it from a peer who's going through a similar situation, it just sticks so much better. And so we love our peer support groups. We have one in Cripple Creek. Gail Melton runs that group. It's a cross disability support group. We also have some exercise groups out east in Calhan and in Lyman. Keenan Coatney runs those. And so we help people get fit, find information, and also share information. And then we also have our deaf and hard of hearing services. And so Chelsea Elstead is our deaf and hard of hearing coordinator, and she does outreach for the deaf community. And so she helps make sure people get information and referral services. She helps get them connected to assistive technology. And she also finds all these really cool free activities that are going out in the community. And we also we're able to talk to and help get interpreters up in Cripple Creek. They have the Butte Theater up there, and now they're offering at least one show with the ASL interpreter for all of the shows. And then we also have a youth transitions program, and Edgar Morales runs that program. And this empowers young people between the ages of 14 and 24 who have a disability and helps them get integrated into the community to know what's out there, what's available, helping get library cards, helping get people connected to different services out there. Next slide, please. Oh, I just saw Laura's message. Edgar is a rock star. We love Edgar. He's amazing. And then we also help people with advocacy. And so we really encourage people to speak up for themselves, ask what they want, ask what they need, and then providing people the tools to get the skills and resources that they're looking for. So we help people learn what their rights are, how to use their rights to gain greater independence, helping people advocate for themselves, sometimes giving people the words to do that, to overcome life's barriers. A lot of people with disabilities have been told, you can't do this, don't do that, you shouldn't do that. We do the opposite. We like to ask, what can you do? What do you feel comfortable with? How can we help you do this? And then we work with others to raise awareness and challenge institutional barriers, like making sure buildings have switches for people who use wheelchairs, canes, walkers, crutches. We'll do marches. We'll go to local meetings, and we'll talk to city council. We'll encourage people to advocate for themselves too. And so if there's an issue, we want to invite them to be able to speak their mind and share the barriers that they're facing. Next slide, please. All right, and now we're going to talk about our family and friend caregiver program. So this program, we are licensed in the state of Colorado, and this program works through Medicaid, long-term care insurance, and there's a private pay option. If a person is on Medicaid and has the appropriate waivers, they can hire a family or a friend to be their paid caregiver. And we know a lot of people out in the community already have somebody that's taking care of them. And sometimes that can cause some financial stress. And so if we can encourage people to pay their family or friends, they can usually get additional services, make sure their bills are getting covered by becoming a paid caregiver. All of our caregivers too, depending on the amount of hours that they're working, are also eligible for benefits. They become a worker they become one of the Independent Center's employees. And so they go through training. We also have caregiver support days, and we link our caregivers to whatever we can find in the community that can help them out, and also with respite care. Next slide, please. And so with our home health care services, we had 239,760 home health care visits in the last 12 months. We also had 382,639 home health care hours throughout the last 12 months. So our caregivers they're doing a lot. We love them. They're amazing. Next slide, please. And then we also offer a veteran-directed care program. this program is not based on veteran disability status. It's based on activities of daily living needs. And so this is very self-directed. If the veteran needs help with a variety of activities of daily living, including bathing, cooking, toileting, there's a whole list. We encourage the veteran to self-direct that care. So it's all based on home and community-based services, and it's a partnership between the Independence Center and the Department of Veteran Affairs, and so the Veteran Health Administration, the VA. And so the veteran can pay a family or a friend to be their caregiver. And just so you know the basics of this, the veteran does have to be connected with the VA, and they have to get a referral from either their primary care provider through the VA or through their social worker. Once they have that referral, then that will come over to the Independence Center, and then we'll get them connected to a veteran coach that will help them with the budgeting. Next slide, please. All right, and that's it. Does anyone have any questions?
I have some questions.
Yes.
Okay, so I can see from all the different services you provide that you get a lot of different funding. You have a lot of different funding sources for your services. Can you explain to me how you use the area agency funding? Is it only for people over age 60, or is it for people 18 and above? And how do you separate that out when you're doing statistical stuff? Like how much of your statistics are seniors, for example?
So we use a program called Still Suite, and we can put in demographic information into that. We do work with people of all ages, and so in our rural areas, we are mostly working with people who are older individuals or seniors. We also get a variety of funding. So we are federally and state funded, and then we have some very intentional grants that we apply for to help with pay with our services. And so Philip is our guru for statistics. So usually I could ask him to pull a report and we could see how many people we serve that are seniors. I know that I personally work with a lot of people with seniors. I don't have the statistics with me right now on how many seniors that we are serving. But most of the people we work with are older. We do have our transitions program though, that's 14 to 24. And so we are also working with younger people. But were you looking for like specific?
Well, I was
breakdown of
wondering
ages?
if somebody is older, do they have to have a specific disability, or is their aging enough to be receiving services?
Yes, so our criteria is just that you have a self-disclosed disability, and we'll read the definition, the ADA disability definition, and we'll ask someone if they feel that meets, that they agree that they have that disability, and then we just go from there. Our criteria is not, we don't have a set eligibility. Just if you tell us you have a disability, then we are going to work with you.
And Debbie, to your funding question, their primary funding through the Area Agency on Aging is actually the ADRC contract. So it does not come through it's not the specific Older Americans Act, Older Coloradans Act based funding that we manage.
It comes through, it comes through here then?
Yeah, because we manage about 20% of that contract, and the Independence Center manages the additional contract amount. So ADRC funding comes through Colorado State HCPF office, Healthcare Policy and Finance office.
And if I remember correctly, that means for folks that are age 18.
That's
and
correct,
above.
18 and up. And so while we manage only the older adult population who call in and qualify for that assistance, the Independence Center is able to manage all age groups. And so that way we are able to manage that directly. In the state of Colorado, ADRCs are not paid directly. They have to go through a AAA or a county system. And so it's an additional level that allows us to participate in that part of outreach, but also manage the fund per the statute.
Do you have a sense of what the what the percentage is of the services they provide that are for seniors or those over age 18 or?
We don't, not right here off the top of my head, but we do have quarterly reporting responsibilities that go to HICPUF along with, or actually, it's interesting. The reporting goes to CDHS. The bill goes to HICPUF, but it all makes its way back around through the system to where it all lines up. So, yeah, there's ultimate details that we could pull on an annual basis to determine what those are.
And one of my last questions is, do you provide case management services through these ADRC funds or do you have case management, short-term or long-term or whatever?
We do not. We do not offer case management. We work with people to establish goals, and we're more like coaches or cheerleaders, really. We do refer people to case managers when they need them. Some people do need case management help, and we'll send those referrals over. But no, we do not offer case management.
And just to clarify, I realized I used yet another short term. B's giving me the stink eye here down the road. But ADRC stands for Aging and Disability Resources of Colorado. So that's
Yeah, I
where
was
that funding
interested in a
comes from.
specific piece on aging.
Sure.
It's clear that the disability meets all of what they do, but I'm just wondering what the aging pieces in the funding that they get and what are the specific services that they're providing to aging individuals. And maybe it can't be answered now, but
Yeah. For now, we can't answer that specifically because it does cross so many service lines. But we, like I mentioned, we do reporting that comes in directly from the Independent Center staff as well as our internal staff. There are also time studies that take place that help build out the data, and then ultimately our quarterly reports that go to HICPUF as part of the process.
and I'd be interested in knowing the amount of funding that comes through that ADRC contract.
Yeah, it's not much at all, unfortunately. Yeah. It's around $34,000. We just received and that's yet another one of our fiscal years, because that's a May 1 start date. But yeah, it's not a whole lot at all, but it's what we do have. The majority goes directly to the Independent Center to have that service available in the community. Yeah, so it'll be used in part of their transitions process, since that is long-term care to community service. That's probably the bulk of it. But then also to Maria's point around having the benefits conversations, that's where we partner as well. If we don't have information, we may draw the Independent Center folks into that conversation to serve the individual.
And it's the area agency that's responsible for monitoring or reviewing, or is it a state level agency?
Yeah, so
that does
it's
that?
a blend. We're primarily the fiscal agent, and we do receive reports along with the billings from Independent Center that are incorporated into our quarterly and annual reports that are part of the monitoring. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Sure, you're welcome.
You have a question?
See, I would like to hear a bit more about the home health care program, specifically around seniors and Teller County.
Sure. What specifically do you have any, or do you just want more
What
general
services
information?
do you provide, and how does that work? How does it get started? Did they request it, or just a bit more? You went pretty quick, and that's an area of
Sorry about
interest.
that. Yeah, so and I work in Teller County quite a bit, and usually when somebody's interested in the home healthcare program, the first question I'll ask is if they're on Medicaid. If they are on Medicaid and they apply and they are through TRE, the resource exchange, If they get the appropriate HCBS waiver, then they can be eligible to hire that family or friend caregiver. And then so as long as the person with the disability has that waiver, then they can decide who they want their caregiver to be. And so that could be the neighbor down the road, that could be a family member. And that portion goes through the resource exchange. And so then the resource exchange will monitor and maintain that waiver and then make sure that that caregiver is attached to that person. And then they'll come to the Independent Center for training. They will become one of our employees, and then they'll be eligible for certain benefits as well.
So that's the home health care program?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And if you have more specific questions about that too, I can also leave Tracy Heister's information. She runs that program, and she can answer more detailed questions as well. A lot of times I do refer people to talk to her because she can help break it down more as well. And I will also drop off some of our home healthcare brochures to the PPACG. I think I have some updated ones I need to replace our old ones. So I'll make sure that those are available as well.
Thank
This
you.
is Jody again. I'll give some additional context to support
Yeah.
what Maria just explained. In the Older Americans Act, it's primarily the language is client-directed voucher systems. And so this program that the Independent Center manages in coordination with TRE, the Resource Exchange, which does have an office in Woodland Park, is specifically managed through the HCBS waiver under Medicaid. And so, but it is still, it's the same idea. It's client directed, and therefore they can pay that individual, family, friend, cousin, it doesn't matter. They go through the process and become the caregiver for that individual.
We have a question from Bill. Would you like to?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to thank her for coming out into South Park County. We're actually getting some representation up there.
Terrific.
Yes.
Check mark for Maria.
Marilyn?
Yes. She's
Um,
sitting next to me and I didn't even notice her.
Maria, from the seniors that I know, they would oftentimes, they would not see themselves as having a disability, and yet, you know, they need assistance. They're losing their vision, they're having physical, what would you say to me as a friend? How do I tell them to reach out to the Independent Center?
That is a wonderful question. And I've had a lot of conversations with people where when they hear the word disability, they think the word wheelchair, and they're like, I don't have a disability. I'm not in a wheelchair. And so we will have that conversation where I will ask if the medical situation that they're facing, if the loss of vision or hearing has made things more difficult for them, if it's more difficult than it used to be, or if they're getting frustrated with certain things, I'll ask if that's the case. And if they say yes, then I'll usually, in a kind and gentle way, be like, this may be a disability then that we could be able to help you get the tools that you need. And just to kind of break down, that disability is a very, very broad term, and it can really mean anything. And so sometimes we'll talk about it for a little while. We'll just have that conversation just to talk about how can we make life easier for you, and how can we help you be able to hear on the phone better, or see things on the screen better, or is there anything else that would make life a little easier for you? And so just taking that time to have that conversation usually seems to help. And then someone will be like, oh yes, I do want that help. And I guess I do have disability. Even if they don't want to use that word, if they'll say, I do need help with this, then we'll be like, awesome, let's click that box and let's get you the tools you need.
Thank you, Maria. We can hold off with more questions for you. Right now, we need to have Laura Cruz provide us with the information she's prepared on the man pilot update. Laura has to leave early, and we're going to just make an exception here.
Maria, if you're available to stay on the meeting, we'd love that, so that we can address a couple of these other questions, perhaps after Laura's presentation.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I apologize, I have to scoot a little bit early today. I have a board meeting, so right after this. But I came to you guys, to this group, back in, I believe, the fall of last year to discuss a needs assessment that we conducted over the course of 2022. It's a needs assessment around transportation needs of seniors as well as individuals with disabilities. So a little bit different of a hat that the mobility kind of side of PPACG wears is we don't necessarily just focus on those that are age 60 and above, but also individuals with disabilities that are 60 and below. That's the main driver for that is, well, two main drivers. A, we should, but B is our funding for 5310, which is Federal Transit Administration money set aside for the enhanced mobility of seniors and individuals with disabilities. That funding that we receive is actually for the general population of seniors and individuals with disabilities. And so last fall, I'm driving here. I got to remember I'm driving here. Last fall, we conducted a needs assessment, and a part of that needs assessment was going out to seniors and individuals with disabilities and hosting focus group meetings. I took a very different approach in this needs assessment. I mean, typically you have a survey that goes out, you take the information for that survey, and you have a lot of quantitative analysis based upon those needs, and then you present those needs and try to figure out solutions for that. Took a different approach. I thought that the needs were going to be to, I thought that it'd be important to give people the opportunity to speak freely about their needs because they're so diverse and they're coming from diverse backgrounds. And so the focus group meeting model, we actually met with 60 seniors and individuals with disabilities, mostly focused within El Paso County, to determine what are some trends and needs amongst folks. What are some of those underlying challenges that folks are facing outside of the current system of offerings? And so this, I have to put a little bit of a plug, though, of the funder for this project, as well as the implementation project afterwards. The funding came through National Aging and Disability Transportation Center. They are a subsidiary, or maybe that's a term for it. They are their own organization, but they are made up of Easter Seals and U.S. Aging. So there's basically two CEOs of this organization, but they provide a lot of grant funding that FTA provides to them to help with sort of identifying solutions out in the field of transportation needs. So we did the needs assessment, and then out of the needs assessment, 4 overarching themes came out of those discussions with individuals. I created a full matrix of all their comments. It's pretty extensive, but being able to kind of see where they were crossing over in terms of needs. And so of the needs, the 4 main the 4 top needs that were out there not being met is a need for options for last minute trips. So spontaneous trips, not necessarily last minute trips to go to the doctor. We always seem to focus on medical assistance here, but really for socialization as well, just being able to be spontaneous like those that are mobile in the room can be, right? The need for weekend and late night trip options. Most of our agency partners, they end their service at 5 o'clock. right? Or they may not be open on the weekends. And so that really creates this box of where individuals can access transportation. The need for the need for an individual to stay with them during a visit, specifically a doctor's visit. There's a couple of reasons around that. You never know when you're going to be done with your doctor's visit. So coordinating transportation to be picked up afterwards can somewhat be difficult for both the provider and the individual. And secondly, it was, communicated by several folks that they may need somebody in the room to listen to that doctor for them, to say, okay, this is what they have been communicating to you, what sort of having somebody that may have cognitive issues comprehending what the doctor's saying to them. So sort of an advocate to be with them. And then lastly, the need for more group trips for recreation and shopping. People want to be with others. And so it's uh, so for some people want to live in the middle of nowhere away from everybody, right? Bill. Yeah.
He still wants to be around that.
He still wants to be around this. Bill still shows up. But yeah, the need for socialization is huge, and people, especially as we're coming out of the pandemic, folks want to congregate and reconnect. So looking at the project selections, NADTC, so the National Aging and Disability Transportation Center, provided us additional funding after the needs assessment for an implementation project to address one or more of these needs. One of the things that is not included in these needs, but also a common theme that came through, was people didn't realize that they could access multiple different agencies to fulfill their needs. They thought that if they were an Envita a customer, they could only ride with Envita. They thought that if they were a Silver Key customer, they could only ride with Silver Key. Each one of those agencies have their own parameters, their own, constraints of when their hours of operation are, where they go, those types of things. I had a lot of people that utilizes MMT's paratransit services that thought that I have to stay on the paratransit line that's available. I don't have access to any location outside of the 3/4 mile radius of a transit route. If you can kind of imagine, if that's your thought process, your box is already small, and that box gets a lot smaller when it comes to that. So, as a part of kind of selecting the projects, we actually have had a steering committee of individuals, primarily individuals with disabilities and seniors, a part of this steering committee, kind of walking us through, how do we operationalize these projects moving forward? What does that look like? What kind of things do we need to consider in the planning process, and what kind of things do we need to consider with communication purposes to the specific folks that we're trying to target with our implementation? So the Independence Center, which it's great that we were right after the Independence Center today. The Independence Center really helped us formulate this committee and helped us throughout this project. And so we identified 2 projects. I'm mostly going to talk about the on-demand transportation project today. But the 2 projects was the development of a mobility guide, which has been in the works since basically I started here. And then also an on-demand transportation model. So here's the project team. Obviously PPACG, we've had Melissa on the team, as well as myself, and Jared has been helping as well with the development of materials, engaging the steering committee, sort of project management, and ensuring that we're reporting out our reporting out on our objectives to the funder. Envita has been a part of the operational piece around the on-demand pilot. So we basically took, okay, from the steering committee, here are the 2 projects that we want to implement, went to agencies and said, okay, who can implement this for us from an operational perspective? And Envita stepped up to the plate. This was actually something that was in sort of their long-term plan to test doing on-demand transportation. And so we also worked with the Independent Center staff, which is what I just discussed, and then program participants. Our program participants were involved throughout the full process of development and implementation. I've said to this group many times that we can design programs all day long, but those programs actually may not be addressing the needs of individuals unless you engage them in it. So yeah, so that's the approach we've taken, and this is how we've kind of gotten there. So our targeted participants, in order for us to feel like we could, work towards success with the on-demand transportation pilot, we really kind of looked at and worked with Envita to say, okay, what is your capacity to run this, to do this program? And a lot of it was unknown, right? It's a pilot program. You don't necessarily know the tools that you need in order to be successful. You don't necessarily know the volume of folks that will be requesting the rides. On an on-demand model, it's not something well planned out. It's not supposed to be well planned out in terms of providing that service. And so some of the parameters is we targeted participants, and we first started with 50% participants that were made up of both individuals with disabilities and seniors. That number, that 50, came about by us just having a conversation and saying, what do we feel like we can manage? We have grown that participant list to 78 over the past 6 months. We felt like Envita kind of felt like they were kind of hitting their stride and wanted to incorporate more individuals into the pilot. We also saw that certain individuals were utilizing the pilot more than utilizing the services more than others, right? So that opened up some of the opportunities to enroll others. A huge component of this project is targeting diverse populations. That's not only a something that we value at PPACG, but it's something that's definitely valued by NADTC, the funder. And so we worked with Envita as well as Gratio Housing and the Independent Center and New Vision Services to determine, folks that may be missed out of our current services because we may not be as well engaged with diverse populations, and we've talked a lot about that in this group. So we worked with them to identify a good, mix of individuals to participate. We needed to establish program parameters, right? We couldn't just say, okay, we're going to go everywhere and anywhere at any time, right? Working within sort of the capacity of Envita, but also trying to develop parameters that we could potentially change moving forward, but we needed to start. So, and these were communication points, though, as well, to participants, right? This was kind of one of the hard things that we worked with the steering committee on was, A, we're working with the population that may have some cognitive challenges, but B, we're also needing to communicate some very direct directives to individuals so that they know how to participate in this program. So the program parameters is, these are same day, same time kind of rides. If y'all have experienced Uber, Lyft, this was sort of the model we were going after. Now, knowing that there's some, capacity challenges and navigating this with a new program, but also having to think about vehicle access for, we had a lot of folks that were in wheelchairs that were a part of this program. So making for sure that we had an accessible, Invada had an accessible vehicle available to provide those services. So it was a little slower than Uber and Lyft, but it was much different of a response time than their typical, 3-day to 2-week booking time that they typically have with rides. Rides must be within a 7-mile radius of their origin location. That's again kind of looking at, we were like, what's sort of the national standard model for folks that have started this program? And B, where did we feel like we could be responsive, right? So essentially, unfortunately, we had to put a box around this a little bit and say, okay, 7-mile radius is something that we felt like we could respond to. And then rides provided, this was, sort of the hours of operation between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m., Sunday through Saturday. So all week, right? This was a change, Sunday service, Saturday service. A lot of folks like us want to do things on the weekends, and this was an opportunity to address actually one of those other needs that we identified earlier. Rides were provided at no cost to participants. A lot of programs, national programs out there actually charge a fare for this. But because of funding, we were able to, and the fact that it was a pilot, these folks were a little bit of our guinea pigs, right? In the project implementation. We provided this program at no cost. We had the funding to do that with NADTC. And then we assigned the number of rides based upon our funding availability that we could do per customer, per participant over a course of 6 months. Challenges with the program. So again, pilot learning, right? So one of the things that Invita learned pretty quickly was they struggled responding to ride requests between the hours of 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. during the week. There's an underlying reason for that, and we're trying to kind of address this at a more global level. But essentially, Invita, as well as a lot of the other agencies out there providing transportation services, have been inundated by taking people to day programs that prior to the pandemic had transportation by those day programs that they have now decided not to provide their own transportation. So there's a lot of folks being transported in hours that typically these agencies were not having to run around trying to do this. So it was hard for Invita to respond during these times. Staff turnover at Invita. Been a lot of staff turnover. And this is one of the things that they've highlighted in their report several times. With that staff turnover, having that consistent training that they needed to have with both dispatchers and drivers and those types of things really kind of, created disruptions throughout the program. Software limitations. This is something that all of the providers have talked about is, yeah, we want to do this, but our software is really catered around a demand response model and doesn't necessarily give us the great integration opportunities for on-demand services. Vehicle availability. I talked about just a few minutes ago, we have wheelchair accessible folks that need that service, and then we have folks that don't need that service. And so as you're implementing a very fluid model, having the right vehicles available for the ride request. And then point of entry phone system. What I mean by that is Invita actually developed or or made a separate number for the on-demand transportation rides so that they were not waiting in queue with all the demand response calls. And so the challenge with that was who was going to own that phone. Specifically, since the program operated outside of their regular hours. And so initially there was staff that were taking a cell phone home, you know, kind of working on call. It was a lot of running around, that kind of thing, and making for sure there was consistency of someone picking up that phone call, because that was actually one of the trust challenges that folks acknowledged from the get-go is, all right, if I'm booking this ride and I need a return ride and I'm booking it in the moment and not something that's been set in stone, am I going to get that return ride? Am I going to be stuck somewhere? And so those are things that we had to address. And then confusion and frustration around the 7-mile radius. Based upon, you know, who was looking at what Google Map route, you know, sometimes there was some crossing of challenges there. And it also limited people to get to, you know, places they really wanted to go or needed to go. So we had comments about, you know, folks that lived up north really within the 7-mile radius couldn't even get downtown, right? So those are things that as we move forward are kind of assessing what is the capacity. Now we've seen that that's a challenge for folks. How do we make adjustments in the future? Successes. Melissa and I actually attended, we did a post focus group meeting last week. Yep. Post focus group meeting last week. We had about 7 people in the room, I think, of the participants. We've also done a post survey or in the process of a post survey, but these are the successes that folks have identified. People were able to accomplish several trips at once. And that's one of the reasons why there's a lot of agencies and systems going to this model, kind of moving a little bit more away from the demand response, still keeping subscription rides, to being able to provide this type of service so that they're not doing all these individual trips for, so say for instance, I need to go to the store, I need to go to the bank, I need to go to a doctor's visit, I want to go see my friends and have dinner, right? Those are all like 5 separate trips that currently our agencies are providing. With this type of model, that kind of takes that away. It's like, okay, I drop an individual off at the King Supers on Uinta, right? Drop them off at the King Supers on Uinta. And this is a real-time story. This happened. I can get my nails done. I can go to Ace Hardware. I went to the Arc. I went to Walgreens, right? Those are all trips. And then I was able to call, have somebody pick me up within 15 minutes, right? Instead of that being 5 or I don't know how many, 5 different trips, that was accomplished in a day. And so folks were like, I can be more efficient with my time. I'm not spending a whole day on going to the grocery store. I'm not spending a whole day on going to the pharmacy or to the bank. I'm able to accomplish that in a half a day. So the other piece of it is people just have access to spontaneous trips. Over and over again, we've heard from folks that I feel more normal. You know, it's one of those things that, you know, what is normal? We always try to define that, but they're looking at folks like us that typically can, you know, make the decision of, hey, my best friend asked me out to lunch. I want to go to lunch at 1 o'clock. I'll make my call and at, you know, 12:30 and I'll have a ride to lunch with my friend at 1 o'clock. Right. So these are things that typically these folks have never had the opportunity to do. Services were available to individuals who needed additional assistance, such as wheelchair access. Uber and Lyft has existed for a while, right? But it has not been accessible for individuals that may need additional assistance, even though they're supposed to provide, the Uber Lyft's supposed to provide this, a lot of people who have a service animal get turned away by Uber and Lyft, and there's no accountability for that. So this was an organization that is typically used to working with individuals that may have that resource. Also, Uber and Lyft in our area don't provide wheelchair access. So again, this was something new, something successful. Ooh, where'd it go? I pressed end. Hold on. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Okay. So next steps with the pilot, we're actually continuing the pilot through the end of 2023 at least. We saw, you know, there has been ups and downs with implementation of the project. We're kind of been working through those ups and downs, and assessing those things and saying, okay, yeah, there's a lot of benefits to this program, but we still need to have additional time to kind of understand what the needs are moving forward, testing some of those solutions to those needs. And so we thought, you know, hey, this is something people generally have been happy about, excited about, really helpful for them. Why stop it now? Advocate for this service to expand to other partners. We recognize that not everybody has the tools to do this, but we want to make for sure as a planning organization, PPACG being a planning organization, that we're working on developing tools, identifying tools for other agencies to take this on. And some agencies are already doing some of this, but they're having to kind of ad hoc work it into their systems. I know that I think Teller Senior Coalition is on the line right now. They are providing some, you know, just-in-time trips. Silver Keys also providing some just-in-time trips, but it's not something they can super promote because they don't have the tools available to them to really do that. So it's important for PPACG as we're looking at, okay, what kind of services really address the needs now? That we're looking at, okay, how do we equip our agencies to do that? Assess the parameters of the service area is important. So again, looking at the 7-mile radius, does that make sense moving forward? Can we make some more adjustments to the times that we're available? Identify solutions to participant access. You know, right now it's all running through one phone number. Is there an opportunity to have an app for individuals to book these rides that are able to book through an app? We recognize that a phone number is still important to have for that, you know, that more personable access point for those that need it. But can we be more efficient if we have both going on? And then help strike a balance between providing on-demand and demand response rides. I think this is what kind of has the providers kind of shaking in their boots. Is okay, we're already providing all of these demand response rides. How do we integrate this service into that? And so that's something that, you know, from a national perspective, a lot of transit systems are figuring that out. And I think that it's important for PPACG to provide resources, not for just, you know, the infrastructure piece of it, but the planning piece for these agencies. And that's it. Any question?
Very good. Very good.
I'm very impressed. Thank you so much for giving us so
Yeah.
much detail that makes the package.
Yeah.
And do we have any questions?
And sorry it wasn't quick and dirty, like I said, but
I just have a comment. Thank you for recognizing that it's 15 miles from northern El Paso County to Colorado Springs downtown. I drive it every time I come to this meeting.
yeah.
And so it seems like transportation from somewhere in the county to the major centers could be part of the plan. I'm not sure how you do that.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things to highlight, we actually focused this pilot in Colorado Springs. So all of our participants were in the Colorado Springs zip codes. And again, that was based upon, okay, let's test it in this area and then grow it in the future to other areas. Be successful, figure out the bumps, figure out what you need to grow that, and then move forward.
Is there any further discussion?
I have a question, and it looks like somebody's even before me.
Kathy, we'll get to you in just a moment, because I think your hand went up during Maria's comment. So, Mary, go ahead.
My question has a fascinating report, Laura. It's so much stuff for you to cover. But I never heard the word emergency as you were talking. And I'm wondering, of course, you can't really call one of these services and say, I think I'm having a heart attack. Could you please come and get me and take me to emergency room? Actually, I've been in that situation myself, and who I called was the fire department, and they came and assured me that I was okay. But somebody who really needs to go to the emergency room, because it is an emergency, it's obviously an emergency, and they do need to take an ambulance, which is an incredible expense. Is there any way that they can be reimbursed or helped out with that expense if they must take an emergency vehicle?
I think just to kind of answer your question in a roundabout way, Mary, I kind of see that as a different service than on-demand transportation. I mean, in particular, people should not utilize the on-demand service for an emergency ride like that, which you're not getting at that point. But I think that is something, an opportunity in the future. I don't know what the scale is of need out there, because that was not something that was identified through the needs assessment as a huge, need. I understand that in the moment, it may be a barrier for folks, or a challenge for folks to pay for that emergency transportation. I also know that a lot of, if you're a Medicaid, specific Medicare supplements really help with that additional cost that comes along with that. But that's something that would be a great conversation for individuals to have with our AAA case managers as they're looking at their, Medicare plans, and kind of understanding, even with the independent center, kind of understanding Medicaid options there to help pay for those types of things. But in terms of the on-demand service, I'll tell you that the on-demand service has primarily been utilized for socialization. And so that's been a missing piece to the puzzle that we've had for such a long time, that folks just haven't had the opportunity to just socialize with people. NADTC came, I wish I had great pictures, but NADCC has been a little slow in showing their pictures. But they came with a camera crew. We did a mock ride with participants, and we did a mock ride to actually Jive's Coffee down the street. And everybody's sitting around the table after they got their coffee. They were shaking their heads saying, "This was nice," And those are the kind of things we take for granted. And a lot of the funding, like AAA funding, has parameters that sort of inhibit those types of activities. It's got to be used for XYZ. That doesn't really fit into that model. 5310 can be used for that, but that's not necessarily what a lot of our funding resources are designated for. So that's a really roundabout way, Mary, of explaining that. That may be a need out there. It may be just a need out there that's not being addressed through programs that already exist. And that's sort of what what I'm getting at.
And do
that's-
also,
Thank you.
yeah, and this is Jody again. Do keep in mind that the drivers for these programs, both this pilot program and our traditional driving sources, or transportation providers are not medical providers. So, there are statistics that show that instead of trying to drive yourself to an ER or get a ride to an ER, your best bet is to call in an emergency situation, to call for that ambulance to arrive, because they can work on the individual at the time of the emergency. So that's another important that issue that disqualifies this type of service from that provision, is that they are not medical providers, and that would put the entire program at risk if that were being considered. So it would really need to be a completely separate solution.
I'm wondering, when you call to make a medical appointment, it always starts out with, if this is an emergency, call 911. I wonder if that on-demand phone number might start with that message, so that the folks aren't on the phone or on hold hoping to get somebody that's going to send an ambulance or send somebody to take them to the emergency room. Would that be an interesting and informative thing to put at the beginning of the call? If you're looking for emergency transportation, hang up and call 911.
I think that's a great suggestion. I will say, Mary, that we were very communicative, over communicative, super communicative with the participants. So we have a small participant pool, right? And that allowed us to have more of that hands-on communication
Input.
with participants. And so we up front told people, we were like, look, this service is not, the purpose of this service is not necessarily for medical appointments. If you have a set medical appointment, that needs to go through the demand response type of service. This is for, that spontaneous nature, and not for that type of, like you're mentioning, that type of emergency assistance. So, it was very much so communicated in that way. And as we grow this, communication moving forward is going to have to develop in a different way. And so that's a good suggestion as agencies start to grow in this business and providing this service.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions? Thank you.
You are welcome.
Madam Chair, I'd like to go a little bit off the agenda, or off the usual expected operations. There were a couple of questions that came up towards the tail end of Maria's presentation, and I'd like to invite those to ask. One of those in particular was Kathy Lowry from Teller Senior Coalition.
Kathy, are you there?
I am here. Hey, Maria. I had a question on your home health services. So we have seniors that need that service, but some of them don't have relationships with neighbors or family members to provide that service to them. Do you have like a list of home health people that would come up to Teller County? Is that something I could get a copy of?
Yes, that's something I can talk to Tracy about. Talking to her though, it has been really difficult to get people up into Teller County. We've been trying to find people willing to travel or who live there and can work. I will reach out to Tracy, and then is it okay if I just send you that email directly?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, that is something we're actively trying to work towards and get people up into Teller, because it is needed.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to take a little detour there. We're ready to continue.
Thank those for the presentations that were very thorough, and I learned things I didn't know. Our membership committee is Rosemary. Rosemary's not available today. And the Strategic Review Committee, Jen, is also not available today. So we're going to skip down to Jody to do the director's report.
All right. Well, good afternoon or good morning, everyone. Yeah, good afternoon. It's been a long day already. Thank you so much. I just wanted to highlight some things that have been going on with the Area Agency on Aging and staff. Last week, myself and Melody Hanna, our contracts administrator, were able to attend the National U.S. Aging Conference in Salt Lake City. We heard a lot of great program ideas, some things that we're mulling over to perhaps bring into our region. A lot of great connections for future collaborations. I also had had opportunity to sit on 3 different panels to share. One was around the NADTC pilot that Laura just shared with you all today, and so that was really exciting opportunity to be able to share that progress on to our national partners and other AAA staff. Also, another one around transportation and behavioral health and challenges and things like that. And so I was really pleased to be able to do that. I also got to sit on their new director's boot camp. As even almost 4 years into this role, I am considered a rookie. So I wasn't the youngest in the room, that's for sure. And I certainly was actually probably the oldest on the panel. But it was a really excellent opportunity to share some of the things that we do here in our region, some of the services, the operations of our AAA. And things like that. So that was really just a fantastic opportunity to participate in that. Yesterday we held our quarterly provider meeting. Had a really wide breadth of topics that we covered. One of those I will share here separately. We talked about contracts and our option letters are currently in process to begin this next state fiscal year 24. We also talked a little bit around our ARPA funds and reimbursement processes and that kind of thing. The one thing that I did want to share, and Jared, if you wouldn't mind throwing up that notice of proposed rulemaking flyer, thank you very much. We are currently in the midst of a 60-day comment period by the Administration for Community Living, who is our federal agency that administers the Older Americans Act across the United States. There are some proposed updates to the Older Americans Act regulations, and to give you some context, I thought I would give you some interesting facts. The Older Americans Act, like I mentioned, that is our federal mandate. That gives us the instructions on the services that we are to do, how to do, and provides the funding authorization. The Older Americans Act was first passed in 1965, was last reauthorized just at the beginning of COVID, so March of 2020. However, the last time there was a significant update to the regulations around the Older Americans Act was 1988. So, what were you doing in 1988? That was the last time there were significant changes. Now, every time it gets reauthorized, which is about every 4 to 5 years, there are really minor changes. Sometimes it's around language. just, updating the language but no real significant rule updates. And so it has been a long time coming. So a couple of things to consider since 1988. The population of our older adults across the United States has nearly doubled. Our older adults are living longer than ever before. And of course, our expectations for aging have changed. Probably the primary, and of course what drives our work around the Older Americans Act and the work that we do across our region and in the community, is that, and we hear this, we heard this through our 4-year area plan process, our community conversations, we hear this in different surveys, is very well represented in both of the presentations we heard today. That was not planned, but it is what we do. And that is that nearly all older adults want to remain living in their community. It may not be in the same home, but they want to remain in the community that they know. And so Older Americans Act funding and directives really provide the reassurances and the process to be able to do that. But a lot has changed since 1988. And so this is a fantastic opportunity. Now, this proposed, it's a very long title, a proposed rule to update the Older Americans Act regulations. The goal really is, as I've touched on, is to reflect the needs of today's older adults, clarify some programmatic requirements, a lot of, obviously, because a lot has changed in the last 30 some years. Ultimately supporting the National Aging Network that delivers the Older Americans Act services, and one of the key provisions of that is the area agencies on aging. Also update the regulations just to align with current statutes and expectations, but ultimately to improve the program implementation to better serve our older adults and caregivers. And so my invitation for you today is those of you who are in the room, there is a single page flyer front and back that has a lot of that information that I've just touched on around the key provisions of the proposed rulemaking. But also on the back is information about how you, as individuals, can access the entire rulemaking and provide direct comments. This invitation is not just for Regional Advisory Council members. It is an invitation to all those who are in the meeting today. Service providers, we invited service providers yesterday during the provider meeting, but there is an opportunity to provide feedback on that. And I would encourage you to take some time and take a look at this. And if you so feel led to provide some specific feedback, you're welcome to do that. This does become a part of the entire legal process. And so every single comment will be reviewed. They'll be grouped. And we don't necessarily expect responses from the groupings of those comments, but do know that they will all be reviewed as part of the federal process. Comments must be received by 11:59 p.m. That's Eastern Time on August 15th. Okay, and so you can do that either online or by mail, and this flyer does have both of those. For those of you who are online, if you go to acl.org/, let's see here.
Jody,
Jared, do you have that? Thank you.
I went ahead and just dropped the link to the flyer.
Excellent. Excellent. Yep. Thank you. So look for that link. It is an acl.org link. There'll be a slash on there to get specifically to the proposed changes. But I would encourage you to take a look at this. Now, with that being said, there are a lot of efforts at regional, state, and federal levels to provide combined feedback into this so that there is even greater weight to the comments. So there are actions happening now with our Colorado Association of AAAs. There are plans to have a united voice with our state administrators. That's the State Unit on Aging, who administer our funding directly. And there's currently an effort. In fact, a little bit later today, I will be sitting in on a webinar for a national response from the U.S. Aging National Association of AAAs. And so there are a lot of efforts here, but I wanted to make sure that you are aware of these changes. You have the opportunity, if you so desire, to access them. It's a fully public process. And so you have through 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on August 15th to do that. It's very weighty. You might want to take it in chunks, but I would encourage you. They have broken it out so that there are key specific areas that ACL, Administration on Community Living, are looking for some specific responses. Debbie, you had a question?
Can you do it anonymously or do you have to leave your name?
That's a great question. The ones that we've seen so far primarily have some sort of identifier, but I think it's fairly, it can still be anonymous. So
Okay.
yeah.
I have a question,
Yes.
and that is, since there is multiple definitions and writing a response, should they be done individually, particular to that specific item?
That is a great question, Madam Chair. I would encourage you to refer to a specific section if that's something you desire, and add, if you want to speak to multiple sections, that you highlight those sections and provide a comment. Now, so we've already gone in and looked at the Federal Register. You can see public comments that are already in there, and some are very broad. We need more money for housing. We want more housing for transportation, et cetera. But there is the opportunity. You can fill that. You can type all day long if you want to. But if there are specific areas that you would like to address, maybe there's a concern around language of a proposed rule change or expansion of a service that you have a concern. Yeah, I would suggest that you do type in that specific section.
I think that's a good idea, because you had said that they're going to shuffle these things around and put them in the category.
Yes.
And that's
yes.
why I asked the question.
Yes, they did expand on that in one of the ACL presentations last week, where they will be combining, not blending, but combining like commentary so that the ACL staff can sort and determine next steps.
Okay,
So if you have a specific section that you want to respond to, I would certainly invite you to do that. Let's see. Before I go on to my next, Maria, you have your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to share that there's also an organization called it's called April. It's the Association of Programs for Rural Independent Living, and they also have an advocacy committee that's also pushing this information for the Older Americans Act and for HUD 504 public comment as well. If anyone's interested in going to those meetings, I can leave a link in the chat, but we work a lot with them, Centers for Independent Living, but they advocate for people with disabilities and seniors. So I just wanted to throw that out, that they're also working on this too.
Maria, can you say the name of that group again, the April? What did that stand for?
Yes, sorry. It is the Association of Programs for Rural Independent Living.
Thanks.
Yes, absolutely. I'll throw the link in the chat.
Great. Thank you so much. Kathy, you have a question for me?
Yeah, I was just curious. I'm assuming that your team has gone through these changes. Is there anything you're concerned about? Anything we should particularly look at in our review of these changes?
You know, there are some language changes around operations at the state and federal level. Probably the most positive out of these changes really provide more flexibility and more interpretation at the state level. So really, I would say most are positive changes because they represent who we are as a service network today versus what it was originally or last updated to be in 1988. So I would encourage you to take a look in the transportation areas, nutrition, and caregiving. And this is primarily from the family caregiver perspective, but it is broad enough that I have a feeling that many of you might have some input. But really, they are broadly very positive changes. Okay. All right. On to the other thing is that we did share with providers, and Melody will be sending out to all of our providers the results of our annual performance survey results. Those typically begin at the end of the year. They go out to every client served in the past fiscal year. In fact, Melody was going to be sharing some more specifics with you. One thing that I will share is that she is out sick today, and so you get me. So I'm going to give you some high level, but the most exciting thing about this is that there are some minimums that are required through the state process. For example, we're required to survey at least 50% of every client. We chose to do 100% of our clients in order to get a broader survey response. We, as in the AAA, actually took on the full administrative burden as well as the cost to survey every single client. In the past, that has, and under the contract with our providers, that is something that they're required to do. We opted to take on that full administrative burden and do the entire process directly to relieve some of that both administrative and fiscal burden from our providers. We will be producing a full hard copy of all of the responses, percentages, individual comments that we will hold here. If you would like to see that, you can just coordinate a time with Melody. She'll have that in her office. The individual reports will be going out to the individual service provider so they can see the responses for their services directly. And for the foreseeable future, we will continue to distribute the annual surveys on behalf of the providers. So the survey was focused on like I mentioned, on the previous state fiscal year, was sent to 100% of our clients listed in the database. Thanks to the work of staff, Melody as well as the contracts administrator, but our internal staff and the SUDS, which is the state database system, and all the providers who we contract with who have access to the SUDS system. We had a lot of cleanup work to do because of the transition from the old software into the new software. But we're very excited to share that cleanup process and preparations for that transition resulted in our region having the cleanest database out of all 16 AAAs in Colorado. and therefore a significantly smaller amount of return surveys. So yay for Region 4, very excited. It was a lot of work. Melody led the charge on that. And so we're very excited, and kudos to our providers who are online, who you and your staff had some of those cleanup duties as well. We appreciate all your efforts. It has been wonderfully recognized at the state level. And so again, the individual performance survey measures results will be going out to their individual providers. But I wanted to highlight we're required to have a 90% positivity rating. And we received very, very high ratings, including well over 90%, and in many of our service areas, a clean 100% satisfaction survey. So we're still examining the overall data. So I wish I could give you an overall percentage, but just know that all of our providers had very, very high ratings in the performance in the satisfaction surveys this year. So the last piece I'll share is that we received our Spanish yellow books on a Tuesday. And so there is a stack out on the desk outside the door here in the lobby. So please feel free to take a few. Bill, I would encourage you, if you're available, I will give you a box to take to Park County. And if you are available, drop off a box to Teller Senior Coalition on your way up the hill. So we can connect on that afterwards. But we do have those Spanish yellow books. As you may recall, the first printing we did last year was really the first time we'd had a Spanish yellow book. We only printed 1,000, and they went very quickly, very quickly. Oh, thank you, Jared. That's lovely. This year we printed 3,000. So if you, those of you who are providers or board members, etc., would like those for your region, please be sure to connect with Lucy Jacobs here at the office. So you can call the 471-2096, ask for Lucy, and she will coordinate getting those Spanish language yellow books to you. She does coordinate that outreach. It might be Melissa or myself dropping them off, depending on where we are, or another staff member, but she does coordinate those out to make sure that we're keeping track, not just of what's going out the door, but to make sure that we order appropriately next year. And so that's why we tripled our print this time, because we had such a demand for those. So very exciting. If you, and you are also welcome to stop by the office next week to pick those up from Lucy, or like I said, one of our staff member can bring those to you. The other is mobility guide, and I forgot to pick one up. Jared, can you throw that up too? We have the mobility guides that Laura has talked about here on occasion. That's across all 3 counties. It includes our contracted providers, but all transportation options across all 3 counties. And so during this process, for example, we learned that Fairplay has a taxi service. They're called hay rides. We had no idea, but it's been such an exciting process to learn what is available in transportation, but it also gives some definitions. You heard from Laura today, door through door, door to door, demand response, and that kind of thing. And so it gives those kind of definitions inside, so someone can learn what those service levels are and get access to services. So this is very exciting. All of what I've talked about, our yellow book, English and Spanish, are yeah, thank you, Jared. Right on it. The mobility guide, the English and Spanish yellow books. The mobility guide will also be in Spanish. That's in the print at the printer today and right now. All of these are also available online. So if someone can't make it here but has online access, they can go onto our website to the ppacg.org/aging section, which is the AAA section, and find all of these resources. So with that, I'm going to call my update complete, Madam Chair, and I'm available for any questions.
Any questions or discussion? I think that everything that's happened that he's just discussed has been a very time-consuming process. And I think that the staff have really provided you with what you needed, and you've provided us with what we needed. The only comment I have is regarding the report is in discussion about the 33rd year anniversary for the Americans with Disability Act. I was in Congress at that time. I was seated not far from the man that wrote that. And I want you to know he was in a wheelchair. I was so impressed that they had hired somebody, Senator Hatch. I was a congressional intern, and Senator Hatch was part of the one who promoted the act. Anyway, I am going to tell you that the next meeting is August 24th, and we look forward. Yes, Melissa.
So before we kind of come to that closure of our next meeting, I just wanted to take a minute and acknowledge that our chair, Marilyn, did something pretty exciting over the last couple of weeks. And I just got to see a picture of her on a paddleboard in Utah, paddleboarding. So kudos to our chair, who is living life quite well and actually found herself on a paddleboard with Wendy. So just wanted to let
By myself.
Yes,
Wendy was
by
there.
herself. Yeah, just wanted to raise
the dog.
that to everybody on the rack. How great that is that Marilyn was doing that.
Thank you.
So
I would love to share as well that I got to see Wendy and Joe Farr last week when I was in Salt Lake after the meetings, got to spend some time with them, and they all wanted to share their they miss Colorado Springs, and they miss the engagement and involvement here, and so wanted to share that. They're sharing their best wishes. And Wendy, for those of you who do not know, Wendy served quite a few years on the rack. Some crossover with Marilyn, and Wendy is Marilyn's daughter. And Wendy now serves as on staff in Salt Lake and outside regions with the Alzheimer's Association in that area. So very exciting that they're still engaged with our older adults.
And it was exciting for me to attend their kickoff meeting. I had no idea what they do. So it was really, I learned a lot about the Alzheimer's Association, and it was good. Is there anybody else that has something to say? Then the meeting is adjourned.